Hi guys, I am Mark Daryl Gonzaga from BSMT1 Antares, and today's video we are going to talk about the English literature in different period of time. But before anything else, what is English literature? So according to internationalstudent.com, English literature is a study of texts from around the world using English language. This written works includes non-fiction, poetry, novels, plays, and any other forms. So now let's discuss about the characteristics of the literary works of the different period of time, such as Anglo-Saxon period, medieval period, and Renaissance period. So according to my research about the characteristic of Anglo-Saxon period, the study.com says that the Anglo-Saxon invaders brought with them a tradition of oral poetry, but it was Christianity that brought them the written word to them. For the most part, only churchmen were literate and spent much time copying manuscripts. Thus, we see plenty of religious topics in the written works of that era. Thus, the Anglo-Saxon period, or the Old English, focuses more on religious manuscripts and heroic poetry. Now, let's go on the medieval period. So according to my research on Houston96.com, among the most representative characteristics of medieval literature, we can mention the following. First, it is located in Europe. Second, it begins with the fall of the Roman Empire and ends at the beginning of the Renaissance. Third, it has three stages. First, the High Middle Ages, the Flat Middle Ages, and the Late Middle Ages. Fourth, many of works of medieval literature are by unknown authors. Next, the theme of the text had moral, ethical, and didactic contents of Christianity that were supervised by the church. Next, it develops the story of chivalry to promote Christian values. Religious texts are part of medieval literature. And lastly, it developed lyrical and epic genres by strengthening the use of verse. So now let's go on the Renaissance period. According to my research on study.com, in order to understand the Renaissance literature, we need to take a time to look at the Renaissance itself. The word Renaissance means rebirth. The world was emerging from the Middle or Dark Ages. The movement actually began in Italy and spread to England, and the English Renaissance occurred from 1500 to 1688. One key characteristic of Renaissance was the idea of the divine right of kings to rule. Another was the development of the humanistic ideas, such as dignity of man. It was a time of scientific inquiry, of exploration, and this was also the time of the Protestant Reformation and the invention of the printing press. Now let's go on to some of the famous authors and their works on the different period of time. First is the Anglo-Saxon period. First is Caedmon. Caedmon's only known surviving work was Caedmon's Hymn, the 9-line alliterative vernacular praise poem in honor of God which he reportedly learned to sing in his initial dream. Next is Bede. Bede's most well-known literary work is the entitled Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum, which means ecclesiastical history of the English people. It is very well written in Old English and provides a careful history of the development of the Christianity in England from its roots until the time Bede wrote the text. Next is Cynewulf or Cynewulf. He has proven to be a difficult figure to identify, but recent research suggests he was from the early part of the 9th century, to which a number of poems are attributed, including the Faith of the Apostles and Ellen, both found in the Vercelli book, and the Christ II and Juliana, both found in the Exeter book. Lastly, Alfred. In 1889, Alfred wrote the famous short poem Crossing the Bar, during the crossing to the Isle of Wight in the same year he published. Now let's go on the medieval period. So according to my research, one of the most noticeable author of the medieval period was Geoffrey Chaucer. He was an English poet and author, widely considered as the greatest English poet of the Middle Ages. He is best known for the Canterbury Tales. He has been called the father of English literature, or alternatively the father of English poetry. Next is John Wycliffe. John Wycliffe, who was famous as a medieval religious reformer and the first person to translate the Bible into English. Next is Thomas Aquinas. Though Aquinas died at an early age, he left behind him no less than 18 folio volumes. His Summa Theologia, the Compendium of Theology, as the name indicates, gathered up all that the Middle Ages believed of the relation between God and man. Next is Martin Luther. Martin Luther wrote a scholastic objection protesting against the church practice of indulgences known as 95 Theses. Lastly, Raphael Holinshed. Raphael Holinshed was famous as the medieval author of the Holinshed's Chronicle of England, Scotland, and Ireland. Now, let's go on to the Renaissance period. First noticeable author was William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was the greatest writer of the era, born in 1564. He was an actor and a poet, but he is best known for his plays. He also wrote tragedies and comedies, and Shakespeare became one of the most well-known playwrights in England. Some of his famous works were Romeo and Juliet, Midsummer Night's Dream, Twelfth Night, and Henry V. Next is Miguel de Cervantes. Miguel was a Spanish influential writer during the Renaissance. He wrote numerous plays and works of fiction, including novelas ejemplares in 1613. Next is Niccolò Machiavelli. Machiavelli was a diplomat in Florence who tried to answer how could a ruler guarantee that he would stay in power by writing The Prince in 1513. Next is Francesco Petrarch. Francesco was a poet and a scholar that lived in the 1300s. He was known for his Italian poetry and wrote many famous poems such as Canzoniere and the Triofi. Lastly was Dante Alighieri. Dante Alighieri, often simply referred to as Dante, was a famous Italian poet during the Renaissance. The Divine Comedy is the most famous of his works, and it is often considered the greatest literary work in the Italian language. So that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned about my video. Bye!